Om Namo Guru Vasudevaya Trilogia Natarana Shri Mula Guru Mahamudra Siddhipala Om Namo Guru Vasudevaya Trilogia Nadarana Shri Mula Guru Mahamudra Siddhipala Om Namo Guru Vasudevaya Teluja Nadarana Shri Mula Guru Mahamudra Siddhipala Om Namo Guru Vasudevaya Trilogia Nadarana Shri Mula Guru Mahamudra Siddhipala Om Namo Guru Vasudevaya Telugia Nadarana Shri Mula Guru Mahamudra Siddhipala Om Namo Guru Vasudevaya Telugia Nadarana Shri Mula Guru Mahamudra Siddhipala Om Namo Guru Vasudevaya Telugia Nadarana Shri Mula Guru Mahamudra Siddhipala Om Namo Guru Vasudevaya Telugia Nadarana Shri Mula Guru Mahamudra Siddhipala Om Namo Guru Vasudevaya Telugia Nadarana Shri Mula Guru Mahamudra Siddhipala. So we are at Vajra Statement 519. The last few statements is about being clear about how we think about the experiences that arise in our process, how to measure, how to gauge what those experiences are about. Do we rely on the Guru's special instructions? What is the relationship between the Guru's special instructions and the Buddha's instructions as found in the Gangyur? So we see how Kyoba Rinpoche is very careful about wanting us to strike the right balance between paying attention to how when these experiences arise, that we recognize what is going on, and also the necessity of the Guru's instructions, but then ultimately how the Guru's instructions cannot contradict the Buddha's teachings. So these are, these statements are not to be taken out of the context of the existence of the other statements. And sometimes I think we do a disservice when we just quote one statement and just put it out there. Oh, Kyopa says da 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 da. But Kyopa Rinpoche also says many other things, right? There are many other statements. So again, to emphasize the need to always be able to, when you hear one statement, in fact, it doesn't even have to be Kyopa Rinpoche, but you hear a Dharma statement made, The way we sometimes, it's funny, we kind of latch on to that, and then we kind of bring out the absurd. I don't know what's going on, but I see this, in terms of like people asking questions. I don't want this to kind of discourage people from asking questions. Sometimes maybe people just ask that so that they want to make sure that other people don't make this mistake. They already know the answer. Maybe it's an attempt to be compassionate and to be thinking about others that they're asking. But sometimes, when they ask this question, I feel like, wait, I hope you're not still asking this, because you are clearly just, getting stuck on one statement, one thing that is said here, and completely throwing out everything else I know about the Dharma. And then asking like, well, it says here this, if we follow this, then doesn't it follow that, then it will be absurd this way or that way? It's like, yeah, obviously. So don't do that. That's the simple answer, Kind of questions like, how do we not, let this become samsaric? You want some fancy answer? Yeah, I can probably think about some fancy answer, but you and I both know the answer. The answer is don't. Right? The answer is don't. Is there a shortcut or a method or something more than don't? Yeah, probably. But you can discover that yourself through your experience. How to say no to samsara getting mixed up with dharma. You have to figure that out yourself. But the simple and the one-word answer is don't. Then try it. Do it and see. So anyway, now 519 is moving in the direction of more advanced or profound experiences. More profound experiences that arises from meditation training. So in particular, there are 3 states of meditative concentration, samadhis. There are 3 meditative states. There are 3 samadhis. And so here called the faultless samadhis. So Kyopa's statement is the 3 faultless samadhis are the cause of the 3 samsaric realms. And this statement is made in response to people claim that a faultless samadhi is the cause of the 3 kayas. So there are teachings, there are explanations of these 3 samadhis, which is the experience of bliss, luminosity, and non-thought. So in very refined states of meditative concentration, in very refined states, samadhi has the connotation of sama is sameness. And that means like equipoise. It's like, I like to use the word settled. When you let body and mind settle. So yes, when you let body and mind settle, and then when it's settled, becomes more quiet, and more quiet, and more evenly, and more evenly, and more evenly, smoothing things out, It's like the surface of a big body of water, like an ocean, It's not easy for it to really become quiet, because some wind blows, then ripples. But the mind is also like this, you let it settle, settle, settle until it's really quiet. In these in these cases, this experience of bliss, luminosity, and non-thought can arise. So in the general kind of explanation for this, you will find references to how this experience of bliss and this experience of luminosity and this experience of non-thought, they are the experience of the three kayas. The experience of the three kayas, whereby bliss is linked to the nirmana kaya, luminosity is linked to sambhoga kaya, and non-thought is linked to dharmakaya. I think I've also seen somewhere where it says bliss is sambhoga kaya and luminosity is nirmana kaya. But that doesn't matter here, because here Kyopa is refuting this. Yeah, he says like these experiences of bliss, luminosity, and non-thought that inevitably will arise in very advanced and refined states of settling of the mind, they in fact are things that need to be purified. They are in fact things that need to be cleared away. Rather than things to be, rather than experiences, rather than states to be encouraged, they are experiences to be cleared away, to be purified. And so that is the gist of this statement. So here in this statement, what we're seeing is, I think Sobich points this out, it says, often people superficially will say, Kyopa Rinpoche dismisses or has little regard for the kind of intellectual, philosophical reflection on this material, on debate, on logic, and warning. So for example, like chapter 6, we have come across statements like the so-called wisdom that arises from listening, from contemplating, from meditating, can lead you astray. Right? So you have statements like that that seems to say any kind of intellectual engagement with this material can lead you astray. So then people, when they see that, they say, oh, you know, Kyopa Rinpoche follows in that tradition of dismissing. Kyopa Rinpoche isn't the only one, but he's part of that tradition that dismisses formal studies, rigorous intellectual engagement. And as Sobich points out, it's like, no, his attacks, you could say, or his critique of intellectual engagement is one of a number of critiques. And here he's critiquing the stuff that meditators, or at least some or maybe many meditators, kind of are very greedy about, so to say, which is this experience of bliss, luminosity, and non-thought. In the commentary, it says, you know, like, not only, he is not just talking about being grasping at these three experiences. He goes even so far to say these three experiences themselves, even without grasping, are things to be purified, things to be cleared away. To show that, and this shows us, you know, this can tell us Not that this statement is for this purpose, but what this attitude tells us, like, forget about like the problem of grasping at these three experiences. The commentary says, according to Kyoba Rinpoche, even when you don't grasp at them, hence called faultless. Faultless here, not absolutely faultless, but free from the fault of grasping. That even when freed from the faults of grasping, these three experiences are not it. They are not the content of the Buddha state. Hence, in his opinion, it's not wise, not skillful to talk about the three kayas as somehow arising from these three experiences. The overall point is that he's concerned that we know how to handle these three experiences when they arise. And there he's saying, actually, these three experiences are just side effects that come up, and that the realization of Buddhahood, or the main realization that needs to be cultivated, habituated, is that this mind is Buddha. This mind is Buddha. So he is making a distinction, or later commentaries make a distinction and say, whereas these three experiences can be so impressive and perhaps even overwhelming in the sense of like getting you carried away and think that, oh, this is Buddha. And he says, but no, the main practice, at least the main practice in Kagyu Mahamudra, is not focused on these three experiences, but focus on recognizing the basic recognition of I am Buddha, or this mind is Buddha. That is, as far as I can tell, the kind of main point of this statement. Of course, probably there are more things and more subtle points that I don't get. In the commentary, there are two pieces to this, two parts to it. One is actually talking about this statement, and then the rest, Chodra spends a lot of time refuting the criticisms of the Sakyapa tradition against Gongchik. That I don't think we need to go into that. As I said, this initial read or study of the Gongchik, better we not get into the territory of what Chodra has to do. He has no choice, which is to respond to objections raised by others regarding what they think Gongchik is saying. And then Chodra has to respond. Some of the responses of Chodra does help illuminate quite clearly what the point of the statement is and how others have misunderstood the statement. And so some of his responses are helpful, but also a lot of his responses, has to do with things that are, like brought up later that is not directly, I feel, related to the statements. So we don't need to go into it, I think. So anyway, let's look at the commentary by Chodra. In some yogis, here yogis means, meditators. In some meditators, the experience of bliss, luminosity, and non-thought arises through practicing samadhi. However, even without being attached to the experience of bliss, they accomplish only the realm of desire. So in fact, Chodra says, Kyoba Rinpoche points out that the desire realm and the highest point of the desire realm might be the limits or as far as these yogis will achieve if they focus on this experience of bliss that arises from samadhi. Even without grasping, that's probably as far as they can go to the height of the desire realm. Then he says, by not grasping the experience of luminosity, at best, I think this we can include in there because the contrast is not very clear when it's translated literally. But you can add, by not grasping, even by not grasping the experience of luminosity, at best they accomplish only the realm of form. And even by not fabricating the experience of not thinking or non-thought, at best they accomplish only the formless realm. And these are the three realms of samsara. So even without being attached and so on, they may practice just these three for an extended period, but they still will only be born within the three realms. Furthermore, if they do engage in the grasping of these three experiences, they are sidetracked by being born as the gods of desire and so forth. So he says, and if they grasp, then even lower their progress. And even without grasping, still at best they are at the height of these three realms, but never breaking out of the three realms. The reason is that in maintaining non-artificially, without fabrication and naturally, a Mahamudra that is free from all the extremes of proliferation, these three samadhis are merely mentally fabricated. Meaning, it's saying, because, in actual Mahamudra practice, even these three sublime states are to be seen and understood as mentally fabricated. Again, like for many of us, most of us, these three experiences don't turn up, in our meditation, but maybe fleeting experiences of like bliss, luminosity, or non-thought, So whether it's fleeting, or whether we do, or we did, or we have had these experiences, know that they are not it. They are still part of experiences that are mentally fabricated. They are still subject-object based. Moreover, however much these three arise for the beginner, by maintaining them, a genuine realization does not arise right then. By maintaining them, meaning if we encourage these three experiences, if they do arise, the genuine realization that we are seeking. So here is playing between these two terms. They are special vocabulary. Nyam and tok. Nyam and tokpa. Nyam are these experiences, these meditative experiences that arise. Tok is realization. He says realization will not come if you maintain. If there's a part of your practice that is like maintaining these three experiences, these three nyams. Once these three experiences are purified, then genuine realization arises. When, for instance, a fire is kindled, although it is in the fire's true nature that smoke rises prior to the actual fire, saying the fire is burning, When only the initial smoke has risen, the fire will only go out. So he uses the example of building a fire. Yes, smoke arises when there is fire. Then when you get smoke, it basically is saying, don't get so excited. In fact, if you get overexcited, the smoke will choke the fire that is being built. So I know, with this outdoor oven I have, if there's air circulation is not right, you start a fire and there's smoke, and then you get excited. Then the smoke inside will choke out the fire. So he's saying the three experiences is like the smoke. If you get excited with that smoke, or you think that's, oh, yes, when there is smoke, it logically means that there is fire. But if you don't know what to do with that smoke, which of course, in the context of building the fire, when you see the smoke, right, you feed more oxygen. You blow so that it will go from smoke to actual fire. So it's to cleanse the smoke, so to say, to blow away the smoke. So by kindling the fire without paying attention to the initial smoke, the fire will be burning right from the beginning. Meaning, don't get excited by the smoke. Keep going, keep going, keep going. Then it will be fire. Since when you experience something, it is only like mist. It will disappear and vanish. And so Pamodrupa says, having abandoned attachment to bliss and luminosity, you should practice the realization of the mind as the Buddha. So here, instead of getting hooked on the bliss, the luminosity, the non-thought, your practice should be on getting to the realization that this mind is Buddha. This next section, apparently there is maybe one authority figure called the old man from Nyangtu, who said something like Pamodrupa taught that these three states, even if they cannot lead you to Buddhahood, they can lead you to the state of the Shravakas and the Partika Buddhas. Here, the statement refutes that. They say, no, this guy, this old man from Nyangtu, we don't know who he is. Now, kind of lost to time. It says, no, Nyangtu misheard, So go to the top of 463. Realization arises from the purification of these three experiences, but it does not arise from the experiences themselves. One must understand that realization attained through purified experience is very different from a realization that one first experiences and then loses again. Purified here, and again, it means like moving through them and going beyond them. You can understand purified in that way. So it's not saying, like you're afraid of these three experiences. It's saying they will arise, and then when they arise, don't focus on them. Don't dwell on them. Keep moving. And so for me, take home lesson, it's like I don't routinely have these types of meditative experiences, not just even routinely. I don't even, once in the blue moon have these experiences, but still I think the take home lesson is, when things go really well, or you label it, oh, it's going really well, my practice, don't do that. Just keep moving. Don't get hooked by it. But also, to be realistic to the level that we are at, yes, you can have a little bit of excitement. It's like you can have some icing, for your cake, but don't get lost in the icing and then lose the cake. Yeah. Then the rest is he's settling scores with the Sakyapa critiques. I don't know if we need to go into it. If we look at Sobish's points, explanation of 519, again, the first section I think is worth looking at. The discussion of the present Vajra statement focuses on the results arising from dwelling in very advanced yogic states, the so-called faultless samadhis of bliss, luminosity, and non-thought, which are doubtlessly among the most virtuous merit-producing states in Mahayana Buddhism. But as the discussion will show, Jigten Sumgön does not believe that the experience of these states causes the attainment of Buddhahood. Instead, they are only, quote, a cause of the three samsaric realms, unquote. The statement is directed against those who believe that these faultless samadhis will be the cause for the three kayas. As Dorje Sherab explained, these people hold that one obtains the Dharmakaya of non-thought, the Sambhogakaya of bliss, and the Nirmanakaya of luminosity. Yeah, so here it's matched up differently. Nirmanakaya is luminosity, Sambhogakaya is bliss. So Dorje Sherab says, these people, they say that you obtain the Dharmakaya of non-thought, the Sambhogakaya of bliss, and the Nirmanakaya of luminosity through a faultless practice of these samadhis. So apparently there are traditions of meditation that says, you focus on meditating on these three qualities, because since these three qualities are very much related to the three kayas, which of course there is. But for Kyoba Rinpoche, he says the resemblance is superficial. Yes, Dharmakaya is beginningless, endless, so beyond thought, beyond concept, but is different from the ordinary experience of the temporary cessation of thoughts in meditation. Yes, Sambhogakaya is the enjoyment body, the bliss body, but this bliss of Sambhogakaya, again, is different from the bliss that you experience in meditation practice. And the luminosity is also different from the Nirmanakaya luminosity. So for Kyopa, he says, no, don't practice these three experiences. Don't feed these three experiences. These three experiences, at best, they are the smoke that arises when you're trying to build a fire. They give you some indication that yes, finally something is burning. But don't be misled by the smoke. And so accordingly, the samadhi of bliss is, quote, like an ocean and a sword that strikes the body. Like an ocean and a sword that strikes the body. The samadhi of luminosity is like a moon rising in an empty house. The body is without inside and outside and without day and night. And the samadhi of non-thought is without even the most subtle thought. So these are things that other people say. Other people praising these three qualities. These three experiences. And Dorje Sherab says, but in our tradition, we say, these are just smoke in the process of building a fire. It is generally accepted that attachment to these experiences causes the yogi to be reborn within the realms of desire, form, and formlessness. Yeah. So even in the other traditions that emphasize the amazing aspects of these three experiences, they say they too will warn, but don't get attached, don't grasp. But here, Jigten Sumgön, however, maintains that even the unattached experience of bliss, luminosity, and non-thought is only a seed of samsara and does not even lead to attainment of Shravaka or Pratyeka Buddhahood, let alone Buddhahood. According to Jigten Sumgön, Buddhahood is the result of what we can consider as chiefly a process of purification. In other words, a process of clearing away. It is in particular a purification of attachment and mental fabrication, resulting in freedom from proliferation. But it is not the result of a mere absence of attachment and mental fabrication. Yeah, in other words, it's saying, it's not like we should not strive for the experience of bliss, luminosity, and non-thought. Instead, we focus on, look at attachment, clean that out. Look at aversion, clean that out. Leave that, leave that, leave that, leave that, leave that. Purify, clear, leave it, drop it. Buddhahood is therefore not a quality obtained through merely experiencing bliss, luminosity, and non-thought with or without attachment and mental fabrication. These three experiences are just advanced states of samadhi that still require further purification. Ultimately, it is their purification that brings about realization. Thus, this, according to Pamodrupa, is done by practicing the mind. Quote, practice the realization of the mind as the Buddha. So Chodra summarizes, Dhammakirti summarizes, complete realization arises from the purification of these three experiences, but not from the experiences themselves. One must understand that realization attained through purified experience is very different from a realization that one first experiences and then loses again. The second sentence refers to the fact that these experiences are nothing but a kind of smoke that arises when one first kindles a fire. If one is focusing only on the smoke, the fire quickly dies. The commentators also compared this kind of experience to a quickly vanishing mist. Hence, the smoke and the mist are the experience that comes and goes, whereas the fire itself signifies the process of purification. Then, it's a lot of the debates that arose between the two traditions over time. I don't think we need to look at that. You can read it yourself, and if you're interested, pursue more, to try to understand the ins and outs of these agreements or disagreements. But I don't think we need to do that. Any questions, comments?
Is the statement, realize the mind as Buddha, is that more akin to maintaining equanimity? Even though we may not be attached to a state of bliss, there is, as long as we're in samsara, there is some desire for that, even if we try to...
You can say that, yes. Yeah. Mm-hmm. It's saying more than that. It's actually saying, I mean, it is saying that, at least at the level that we can do something about it, right? At where we are. But that statement is also, I think, Pamodrupa saying, There is a process of this practice, and it doesn't involve focusing on these three states, focusing on these three experiences. So it's sort of his way of saying, don't worry about these three experiences. Don't pursue them. They might have some superficial qualities that resemble the three kayas, but the way to realize that this mind is Buddha is not by focusing on these three experiences. The way to realize this mind is Buddha, there's the whole system laid out, the whole approach laid out. Well, starting with being rid of the kleshas. So to realize the mind as Buddha in this context is not just, oh, mind is Buddha. Oh yeah, mind is Buddha. But it's removing that which is covering this Buddha. So Pamodrupa and Jiten Sumgan take the approach of like looking at the kleshas and purifying the kleshas, as in clearing the kleshas, not improving the kleshas. Sometimes when we say purify the kleshas, we think we can improve the kleshas. No, it's by removing the kleshas. Yeah, I shared, one time, somebody said to Khenchen Rinpoche, like, oh, I love this tradition. I love this tradition of talk of how, focusing on the result as the path. Yeah, which is a standard description of like Vajrayana. Vajrayana is the way, right, that takes the result as the path. The fruit as the path. So this is the vocabulary of ground, path, and result. Right? This three, this trinity, this triad is a common one. There are several triads. View, meditation, action is another triad, right? Then another triad, this one is the path, the ground, the basis that you're working with. Then the path, the method that you apply. And then applying the method onto the basis, you arrive at the fruit. Yeah. So Vajrayana often, you'll see, say, we take the result as the path. So common expression, I think, to it's like, fake it until you make it. Oh, you fake, or you think I'm Buddha, I'm Buddha, I'm Buddha, I'm Buddha, I'm Buddha, I'm Buddha. I'm Avalokiteshvara, I'm Avalokiteshvara, I'm Avalokiteshvara. Yeah? I mean, a caricature of this statement, right? Vajrayana takes the result as the path. So somebody was saying to Khenchen Rinpoche, oh, I really love this, this is so optimistic, this, that. Then Khenchen Rinpoche, he said, yeah, he says, yeah, that's interesting. He said, then he says, but I really like the tradition that takes the ground, the basis as the starting point. So this person, kind of thrown surprised, because in a way, Khenchen Rinpoche's statement is unusual, because everybody who in Vajrayana says, oh, Vajrayana is so great because, it takes the result as the path, the result as the path, Khenchen Rinpoche said, he said, right now we're deluded. And so the definition of delusion is we don't know, what the result is. We can only know what the result is to the degree we know what the problem is. And then we say the result is the absence of the problem. Yeah? To that degree, we can say we know what the result is. Beyond that, we don't really know, which is true. That's the definition of being confused, right? So his point is that if you get carried away by, oh, the result is this, the result is this, the result is this, and not realize that this is all conceptual, blah, 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 right? Whereas if you take the ground, you take the basis, on the level of ground, he says, on the level of basis, I can see, oh, impatience is harmful, jealousy is harmful, anger is harmful, attachment is harmful. He says, that you can see, you know. Even in a state of confusion, you can recognize, oh yeah, that really is painful. That really sucks. Well, that's my language. That is painful, you know. That is terrible. And he says, then you work on abandoning these things that until now you have taken them like they are jewelry and ornaments. So Rinpoche says, I find this way a lot more easy, and I actually know what to do. Yeah, but not very sexy, you know. People want, you know, the natural state is blah, blah, blah. The Buddha state is blah, blah, blah. And this blah, blah, blah. And this blah, blah, blah. And so it's, you know, everybody wants that, you know. Oh, yes, you are just swell. You are just great. You are just unimaginably great, you know. And in part, I think I get it, you know, in part because I think so many of us are so damaged, you know. Maybe growing up being told you're not good enough, you're not good, you're not as good as the neighbors, you're not as good as the neighbors' kids, your grandkids are not as superlative as their grandkids, blah, 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 all of that, you know. So we're so tired of that. And then when we practice a spirituality, we want a feel-good spirituality, you know. Then the minute we look at any kind of spirituality that talks about removing faults, you're like, no, I don't like that. But whether you like or you don't like, you know, that's like, you know, you don't like that fire will burn you, you know, then don't put your hand in fire, you know. But you cannot blame fire. If you insist on putting your hand in the fire, it will burn you, you know. Whether you like it or not, that fire burns. You cannot change that. You stick your hand in it, it's going to burn you.
Dr. Lai, this is
Yes. Yes.
I'm sharing with Elise today.
Mm-hmm.
Throughout your lecture, I've been thinking about how can I accomplish some of these things when I'm so damaged. And then you just went there and you just blew my mind. Thank you.
Sure.
Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah, so we have to, you know, like not sweep away the fact that, you know, we are damaged, you know, yeah, see that, but also see that, you know, we have to stop letting that define us. You have to make that, you know, leap of faith in some way. And that leap of faith can maybe come easier if you can look to Tara and pray to Tara and go, she's amazing. And she's my nature. Or you pray to Guru Rinpoche and say, oh, he's amazing. Or Buddha Shakyamuni, you know. This is when the devotion part adds moisture into this process, so that you're not just chewing on, you know, stale cookies, you know. Or stale rice cakes, you know, even worse. So don't practice your dharma like that. Okay, today we will stop here. Tomorrow, I mean on Monday, we look at now the next statement is about the three kayas. How the three kayas, each of the kayas includes the qualities of the other kayas. So these three modes of awakened being, they're not three, persons. They're not three things. They are actually talking about one thing, but in three of these dimensions. Then after that, just looking ahead, talking about 21, 22, 21, 22, 23, is talking about more explicitly back to some of the key issues regarding how we should understand Vajrayana. And particularly in the next few statements, it addresses the issue of what do you do with kleshas in the Vajrayana? Because if you don't know how to interpret the language of Vajrayana, you might think, Vajrayana says, all the things in the earlier yanas that are considered afflictions, that are considered things to abandon in Vajrayana, we can just have it all. All the things that are not allowed in the earlier yanas, now, yes, you are allowed, And so these next few statements addresses those things. In the last few statements, I think it's useful to remember they come under the category of Vajrayana. So they are particular to the Vajrayana context, although they have implications beyond the Vajrayana context. But it's good to remember they are discussed under the overall heading of Vajrayana. So even though in the last few statements there's no explicit reference to Vajrayana, even in the commentary there isn't exactly explicit reference to Vajrayana, but I think it's helpful for us if we go back and read the last few statements and say, so what is it in the Vajrayana that these particular statements might be pointing to some of the issues that arise in the context of Vajrayana practice. So particularly then I think like what to rely on, like the Guru's special instructions cannot contradict the Buddha's general instructions. So there I think you can see, particularly in Vajrayana practice. So then that tells us a little bit also about when we talk about relating to someone as a guru in a Vajrayana way, where are the limits of that? Where are the boundaries that needs to be properly upheld and preserved so that we don't go overboard? So I think the three samadhis, I don't know personally how directly it's related to the Vajrayana, although I could make the connections, but the commentary don't explicitly say, like specifically in the practice of Vajrayana, these three states of mind, these three experiences, so it doesn't so explicitly. But in the next few statements, it's going to come back to bring back into clear focus the Vajrayana context of these statements. Yeah. So, okay. Chanchu Semchu Rinpoche Ma Je Panam Je Gyuche Ke Ba Nyam Pa Me Pa Yam Go or show. Ta.
Thank you.
Gracias, Dr. Lai.
Meow,
Dios.
meow.
Feliz fin de semana.
Thank you all.